my lords, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Deductionist podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for stopping by. It's been a minute. It's been a hot minute since we were able to hang out and talk. How are you all? Hope you're all well. I've been working away in America, in the South, in Texas, on some things and some stuff. Um, it was a very warm and uncomfortable time in which I was bitten ferociously by the wildlife and passers-by. But I did get to hang out with Ken Murray. I did get to hang out with Ken Murray, which was a phenomenal time and a phenomenal learning experience. That man is a font of knowledge and a wonderful human being. Um, for those of you who don't know who Ken Murray is, I suggest you look up his works of Training at the Speed of Life and the contribution he made to training for those in law enforcement and enforcement really around the world, and his own brand of weapons tactics and training referred to as simunition. So he was a phenomenal chap to hang out with and speak to and pick his brain. He's the reason I actually have this, which is it is a ring, sure, but it's a puzzle ring as well. Um, so let's head over to the chat. Good afternoon to Paolo as well. Hello, Anders. In a few months, I'm getting the monographs. Amazing, amazing. Thank you for the support. It's been the the monographs 2 is officially out now. May 22nd, Arthur Conan Doyle's birthday, was the official release date, and I am pleased to tell you all that it went straight to number one. It's now a bestseller again, which is wonderful and humbling and weird and awesome. All of those good things, to know that people are receiving it in the way that I intended it to be received. Um, One of the things that I added to that book since the last one was the addition of QR codes, which it is my hope to make the experience of reading the book a little more than just reading the book. To make it a little bit more interactive with trials and tests and examples and other insights from other learned professionals, to really make the experience more well-rounded. That's my hope. That's my hope anyway, and it seems to have been that it's coming across thus far, which is great news. So I'm pleased that everyone's getting their two pennies worth, or however many dollars, rupees, rubles, pounds it converts to, wherever you are, and wherever you're getting it in the world. Um, so yeah, that's the monographs, and this episode today is an Ask Me Anything. So I put something out on my YouTube channel a while back to take in some questions. I've got those up in front of me here, and we'll get into. Oh no, actually, I put it in the network as well, didn't we? Stand by, didn't we? Didn't I? Is right. We'll get rid of Microsoft Teams. We don't really need that right now. Let's have a look at the network. Oh, there we go. Oh yes, no, yeah, people asking me about biscuits, which is great. Okay, so we'll come back. We'll come back to those. We'll come back to those shortly. We'll tackle the YouTube ones for now, and we'll go from there. You may or may not have noticed that I'm not wearing my glasses. That is because I dropped them in my Uber in America. So as I was carrying things into and out of the car, they were hooked here, and they fell. I neither heard them nor saw them. So evidently I did not observe in the proper way. So I'm down spectacles. So let's head over to YouTube and tackle some of these questions as they've come up. And oh, okay. Well, straight in with something that I have spoken about before, from Alex Andred 5617. I've seen your name linked to Chase Hughes a few days ago. Okay, I'd like to know why that was, and when that was, and how that was. Alex then going on to ask, "Do I know him, and how?" It's There is a short version and a long version of that. The short version is simply, yes, I do know him, and we used to work together. That's really the short version of that. When he was first really starting, it was Ellipsis Labs and Ellipsis Behavior. When the Ellipsis Manual came out, I and a few others was working for him at the time, and it didn't last, and that is it. Really, that is it. So there we go. Boom. The Ask Me Anything is working. Is working. It's worth it. That's a pretty strong start. People probably hoping for something more juicier, I would imagine. That's it. We used to work together. The end. um, let's have a look at the next one. Same person. With time passing by, do you feel that you may have lost accuracy and skills you haven't practiced in a while? And if so, what are they? Great question. Great question. Julie. I was. Bienvenue, Julie. uh, so just bear with me a sec, guys. Will you just turn it down a little bit more? Is that okay? Thank you. Phoebes is watching a film over there. So the skills that I feel I've lost accuracy in because I haven't practiced in a while. Uh, I don't feel that I've lost accuracy in skills that I haven't practiced in a while because they're not different disciplines. Everything that I do is subsumed under one discipline. You could make the argument that it's just critical thinking, or it's just reasoning, or it's just memory, or it's just something, but it's one massive subject topic that covers a variety of information. Attempting to read between the lines, I could be wrong, but attempting to do that, I would infer that the question is in relation to deductions and information that I don't use that often. Um, which, in that case, one could make the argument that just because you don't use the information in a long while, does that mean you would lose effectiveness with it, or efficacy with it, or accuracy with it? And again, the short term answer is no. It is a lot like riding a bike, because if you go through the proper foundational elements of storing the information, and you go through the proper foundational elements of using it and making sure that the details have been converted from the palace into long term, then it stops becoming things that you would have to recall, or stops becoming things that you would need to maintain a certain degree of proficiency with, because it's always there. In the same way that you don't really have to think about your mum's name, regardless of how often you speak to her, or regardless of how often you say it out loud. That's your mum, right? Same thing for your wife, husband, spouse, partner, kids, pets. You don't have to think about that piece of information because you've gone through the proper channels to store it in the right way. So the efficacy the efficacy of that data isn't affected by the amount of time that you use it. It's been conservatively maybe 6 to 8 months before I've had to do any work with people on their shoelaces. It's been conservatively, maybe a few years since scene analysis has required any of the data in relation to mold formations, pounds of pressure per firearm that's been used in relation to muscle structure. All of these types of things are maybe once or twice in the past couple of years I've had to use them. But we could go into that right now. and the efficacy, the effectiveness would still be there because the information was stored in the proper way, so it can be used in the proper way, right? So the loss of accuracy is cannot be in relation to the kinds of uh, ways that it would be applied. The loss of accuracy would be in relation to how the information is stored to make sure that it is there when you need it, right? That's the trade-off in that scenario. So if you are experiencing that, Alex, I would recommend reviewing and revisiting how it is that you're storing information, because if it is that it's after a while that you are starting to feel like you aren't as sure of something in the moment, it is less in relation to how good you are at that particular thing. It is more in relation to how easily accessible the information is in relation to it. Right? It's not a perishable skill if it's stored appropriately, because it's just information that exists there. Now, in terms of your critical thinking and your ability to reason and memorize and observe and all of those other macro skills, they would be perishable. They would be perishable, which is why you want to make sure that you have a strong, solid grasp of all of these bigger skill set elements of which you pour the other information on top of. Um, so yeah, nothing in particularly that I feel I've lost accuracy in, because I'm still just as well. I still try and be just as logical as I've always been. I still try and be just as deductive or inductive or abductive as I've always been. I still have my routines and my practicable elements. The one trade-off that I have lost accuracy in, that I found out when I was in America recently when I was working out, is I tried to do a handstand, and bear in mind, about a year ago I could walk on my hands everywhere. I've lost some of my balance in that. That's clearly a perishable skill. I'm working it back, and it's coming back quicker because of the muscle memory. That let's not get started on the reality of muscle memory. That's a whole other discipline of the research. um, but it's coming back more readily because of how often I did it before, and so when I'm reinvigorating these connections, uh, 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 they make more sense in my body that way around. So yeah, that's that one. And then Erin Erin Town. I'm not exactly sure. What act This is already reading like sarcasm. What actually is the airspeed of an African swallow if laden by plate armor? Right? That's a great question, first of all. And then, is it possible to deduce anything about me just from what was written here? Well, that's all I have. That's all I have. So, well, besides the username and the length of time the length of time ago that you wrote it, which was 20 hours ago. So, what actually is the airspeed of an African swallow if laden by plate armor? Uh, well, so unless you're messing up the Monty Python quote from the Holy Grail, which is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow, um, then that's really job one. That's primarily what could have been meant. However, if that is a question that I don't know the relevance or connection to, an African swallow, if laden by plate armor. Well, if you put plate armor on an African swallow, it's going to make it difficult to nail the exact airspeed, because this bird is having to carry armor. So it's not a true test of the airspeed. So you are having to not specifically you air in or iron I'm not sure how you pronounce the name. Um, you would have to make specific connections to the amount of different armors that are there, whether there is just one unique utilitarian plate armor, whether one soldier fits all, or whether there are different ranks and different armors, and the same African swallow has to wear all of the different ones, or it's different African swallows. Whether it's male or a female African swallow, the age. We got a specifics, Bob. Specifics. If you guys are familiar with the John Travolta film Phenomenon, specifics are important, right? And there are specifics here. So what actually is the airspeed of an African swallow if laden by plate armor? There are variables that we need to iron out. If you look at the 8 elements of reasoning and the 9 standards of critical thought, there is a lack of clarity, precision, accuracy, relevance, significance. And in terms of the elements of reasoning, I would need more data, evidence, information, facts in order to sharpen the concept that is really designed by the question itself. So there you go. That's a lot that we could look at in terms of that. Now, is it possible to deduce anything about me from what was written here? Um, there is insight into the knowledge of animals, specific wording of laden, whether that be by Monty Python or if that's your speech pattern, would put you above a certain age. It will put you above 30. Now, that could be 30 years old and a couple of days. It could be 30 years old plus 20 years in that way. But, right, so it would put you above 30. Um, it would suggest a pop culture knowledge or a pop culture connection. It would suggest if the sarcasm is true or the attempts at sarcasm is true, it would suggest a degree of skepticism about you as an individual. So there will be certain things in your life, or it might be all things in your life, that you approach with the I will find out more information, or I will do my own research, or I will explore things that I'm told for their own merit rather than just accept them for what they are. Um, I can see from the photo that there is, well, it appears to be, it's very small on my screen. I don't know if I can zoom in oh, I can. I can't, well, it pixelates. It appears to be blonde woman in the profile picture. Does that mean it's you, Aaron? No. It would suggest that it is, but it doesn't mean that it is. Um, because you can put a profile picture of whatever you want. One of my profile pictures used to be a pipe. It doesn't mean that I am a pipe, right? That's the first port of call in those particular scenarios. So there you go. That's a lot that we can deduce about you just from what is written there. Add to that 20 hours ago, it says that it was written. So 20 hours ago would put it, kind of towards the middle of the night my time. So, that would speak to either shift patterns, lack of sleep patterns, or around the world patterns. The more likely, given that this is on YouTube, is you're not from the same time zone as me. That's just numbers that would suggest that, though. Because we can't account for the numbers in the demographics of people that choose to, sleep or don't. So that's just the prevalence of the numbers that would suggest that you're not from the same time zone as me, as well. There we go. There's a lot to work with there. Oh no, Jay Fraser. Oh no, what's up? What's up, Jay? Calm down. Don't panic. That might not be a real oh no. It might be an oh no that I'm on his screen, right? Who knows? Who knows? Only Jay will know. Okay, so there we go. We've dealt with that one. Alex. Oh, you. Oh, oh, Jay. I'm sorry. Um, Well, we've only done a couple of the questions. We're just at the start. So it's an Ask Me Anything. If you've got any questions, Jay, pop them in the comments and we'll tackle them as we go. Okay, here's the next one here. It seems that Alex has gotten a bit question happy. There's four here. Hi Ben, I've seen you talk about body language and specifically and especially about energy. Could you give more information about that, please? The need to dissipate energy, energy posture and gestures, and other gems about the energy and body language. Thanks a lot. I'm not going to go into it completely because this is something that my students pay for as part of their classes. But I can certainly give you the guiding pieces of information. Well, Jay, if you can't stay to watch, just pop a couple in, and then when you rewatch, I'll have at least addressed some of your questions in here, mate. Not a problem. Good evening, Hen. Good evening. Um, so first of all, my pleasure, Jay. Not a problem. First of all, when we look at body language, though it is a buzzword, I don't ascribe to it in terms of what the words seem to evoke in people. In that you can learn human movement like a language. I don't ascribe to that. In that you could specifically see a movement of an elbow and know that it means this. That's not the way that humans work. They are, I'm saying they like I'm not a part of the human race. We are not equations that you can put information into and always get the same information out the other side, depending upon the kind of specifics that you add. It doesn't work that way. So what I started to look into, and granted, this is my own way of doing this. This is my own way of teaching. Has it been laboratory tested? No. It's been tested around the thousands of people that I've taught and the research that I've found. Does that mean that it's perfect? No. That's just the closest approximation of available data that I could find in the moment to try and make it work. Right? Put it this way, it works better than body language. Anyway, so the I refer to it as human thermodynamics. Okay. So when I'm speaking of energy, I don't mean specific ethereal spiritual energy. I don't mean that. I mean literally the amount of energy that we have in our bodies, energy that we use food and sleep and liquids to convert and use as fuel to engage in the things that we do, right? So if at this moment I'm talking and moving and interacting in the same way that I am, if I'd had slightly more caffeine or slightly more sleep or slightly more food or all of the above, I might be moving a little bit more because I would have literally more energy inside of me. Right? If you look at things like the total daily energy expenditure calculations, you can get some kind of an insight into this. Now, this specifically connects to the way that different structures use different amounts of energy, whether that be big, small, muscular, skinny, heavy, light, whatever it is. Different structures use different amounts of energy because they have different requirements on their body to be able to do certain things. Like, for example, I am currently sat uh, in a figure four leg position, but where my right leg is underneath my left as opposed to on top of. That's comfortable for me. But you'll note I keep moving. So there'll be this where I've dropped one leg down and I've changed sides, and I'll keep doing this because for how big and heavy I am, the weight of my leg and parts of my body sat on my ankle will mean that everything in that area, whether it be the blood flow that's restricted or the weight or the pressure of the muscles being engaged, will use more energy to create fatigue. Right? And fatigue exists in different structures than it does other people. When we look at the timed nature of expression, for example, if I were to hold this here, you know, this is clearly a fake one because I'm having to demonstrate it to you. But if I were to hold it here, it takes energy to pull my cheeks up, to pull my eyes down, to show my teeth, to laugh. The amount that I put towards specific movements is directly connected to the strength of the thought that's in here. right? If you want an area of research that I've spent a lot of time in with this, I mean, there's tons. But if you look at the psychoevolutionary theories of emotional construction from Robert Plutchik, right? In that, what's the difference between vigilance and awareness? It's intensity, the length of time that it takes for something. What's the difference between anxiety and surprise? Intensity, the length of time that it takes to do something. Now, when we speak about a need to dissipate energy, if you look at the laws of thermodynamics, essentially, energy, the amount of, doesn't increase or decrease, it changes form. Potential to kinetic and this type of thing. So, if I have a particularly strong thought or strong motivation that's happening in here that I don't want to let know, and I'm going through this quintessential movement, right? There is a specific amount of energy with this, but then my leg starts tapping. That is a lot of energy that's needing to be dissipated through my foot. It is literally leaking out of me, right? If you've ever asked a hyperactive child to sit still, energy is leaking out of them. They're shaking, twitching, tapping, moving. Same with dogs. When they're happy, they're shaking, twitching, tapping, running around in circles because they have energy that they need to get out. Right? That's why throughout the course of the day, 9 times out of 10, not an exact number, but 9 times out of 10, the human experience, we kind of hit a peak around 2, 3 p.m. of being, energized and happy and connecting to whatever it is that we're doing in the moment, and then we decrease. We start to get those moments where it's been a few hours since we've last eaten, the work day's coming to a close, everyone's driving home, speech patterns become quieter, movements become gesturally quieter. There is less energy driving towards certain things. So when we get home, we have some more food, we have our dinner, and we then re-engage in what it is that makes us feel good. Books, soap operas, whatever it is. I don't know why I picked those. I looked at a book and went straight to soap operas. That was weird. But that is essentially the nutshell notion of the energy concerns within the human thermodynamics of body movement. I could go and gesture towards the TV that's over there that Phoebe's is watching a film on, and I could tell you that TV's over there. There's a film on, or I could say there is a film on over there. Which one is more energized? Therefore, there's a stronger connection for us to interpret towards that because there's more energy that's gone into it. Right? This is a very kind of uh, um, whistle stop approach to the whole thing. But this requires critical thinking in connection to observing a human. Right? Boom, roasted. Not in terms of the office kind of way. Here we go. We've got Anders Garcia. He was here earlier. Good evening, Craig. I've seen you're in, mate. From Anders Garcia. Has it occurred to you in your journey to achieve Sherlock skills that you lost motivation and thought something like, this is just fiction? What did you do in those situations? Again, you're not going to like the answer, but no. No, I've not thought that. Simply put, because when I entered into this, I know, I know it's just fiction, right? I've never been under any illusion that that what I'm doing with this particular discipline, if it's connected to Sherlock Holmes, that it comes from fictional stories. That's why I'm the kind of, if you look at the monographs 1 to the monographs 2, there's many moments in the monographs 2 where I have to say, look, I was wrong. Look at the things I learned about Paul Ekman in that 10-year period. I was wrong, right? And that's the only way we can do that. If it's and we've spoken about this on a few podcasts as well. If you take um, influence or some kind of inspiration, or use whatever synonym is appropriate for you, if you take that from anywhere, that's awesome because it's inspiration, it's motivation to do something. But if you're applying it thinking you're going to be looking at the world 100% in the same way that Sherlock Holmes did or does, depending upon your nerdy belief or nerdy disposition. You're going to be hindered. Your critical thinking, your reasoning is going to be hindered as a result. You have to go into this looking to dispel as many of the fictional elements as you possibly can. One of the phrases that I come up with in terms of looking at the information that we observe as an easy way to get your head around it is, I would say, what's the easiest way to prove that something is? And you get, well, I'd do this, I'd ask this question, I'd explore this data. Great, all valid. But the easiest way to try to prove that something is to try to prove that it isn't. It's the easiest way. Because if you can't prove that it isn't, it is by default. Right? I hope that makes sense. I realize none of you are here. Some of you are live. So let me know if that makes sense or not. But that's the easiest way. That if I observe something in someone, well, there was a guy who's now a behavioral profiler out of Serbia. That his name's Alex. He used to send me pictures of ashtrays because it was a particular discipline that he was fascinated in, the nature of smoking and the many different kinds of ash and etc. etc. And so when I first started to look at that, I was like, it's written about as 140 different kinds of tobacco ash in the stories, and 143 in the series. Is that going to be something that we can readily use in our day-to-day lives outside of being some kind of cigarette sommelier? No. No, right? But does that mean that we can't tell the difference between cigarettes, cigars, vapes, rolling tobacco, and so on and so forth? No, because we can. We can do that. It is possible. So this is the kind of trade-off with that. The easiest way to prove that something is to try to prove that it isn't. Right? I have failed to prove to myself that I can't memorize a scene in the way that Sherlock Holmes is written about. Therefore, I have a pretty good sense of it being a reality. But I was if you one of the ones I quote readily because it was so nonsensical is from the BBC show when it's season 3 after Sherlock comes back from the dead. He looks at the shoulder of the waiter. There's some kind of powder on there, and then receives a text. The waiter receives a text, and Sherlock says, "You better get that. Your wife's just gone into labour." There's a million different ways, not an exact number, but there's a million different ways I can prove that that isn't true. Right? Therefore, fictional. And these are the kinds of distinctions that you would make along the way. So that's kind of the reason why I've never experienced the whole kind of well, this is just fiction, losing my way, because I never entered into it being real. Right? Real is a grey area, which is why whenever and my students will know this kind of phrase well, is whenever we go into a training, I talk about mimicry of a real life scenario, and I'll always do this because as much as we can mimic the elements of it in training and development of skill, it's never a true sense of a reality based training, because for that to occur, it would just occur. It would be like me knocking on their houses and going, here's something to do. That's as close as we can get with that, right? So we're nearly done with the YouTube ones, and then we'll hit some of the comments up before we tackle the network. From your first edition of monographs to this second one, what aspects did you consider most differently in the way of approaching your craft? Oh, good question. It kind of connects to what I've mentioned around already, because from the writing of the first one to the writing of the second, there's nearly 10 years between that. Nearly, right? Nearly 10 years. It's a lot of growth. That's a lot of changing of minds or disciplines or of approaches, of refining material, of sharpening it, of doing it in 3 steps as opposed to 612. These types of things happen. So the main thing, I just pulled out a wire. The main thing that came out of the difference of writing the monographs one and the monographs two is the way I wrote. Right, I always write how I talk, always, and it's annoyed every editor and every person that's ever read anything that I've written. I will not change that. I will not change that because it is my maybe vain attempt to try and make it feel like we are talking together. I don't want there to be a massive change from you reading something that I've written to talking to me. So you know that it's being delivered in the same way. But you'll note that the amount of focus on the critical thought element and the reasoning element has improved from version 1 to version 2, mostly because I spent 10 more years doing it. So if I were to write another one in 10 more years, it would be different because my critical thinking around certain things that I use day in, day out will have sharpened, will have been tweaked and changed. And that's the great thing about this particular discipline, about this particular, dare I say it, art form. That might be a bit of a douchey way of saying it, but it is what it is. Everyone has their own individual way of doing it, much in the same way painters have their own individual way of doing things. So I'm calling it art. I don't care what you call me. It's happening. Yeah, that's one approach to the difference between the two. The second was me making calls on which chapter to leave out and which chapters to keep in. And the call was based around the development of the data. There's new things that I've discovered and more things that I've found on everything and more. But for those of you who've written books, which if we know from, where is she? Uh,
Unless you're really ignorant or a child, you should probably know practically anybody can write a book.
I love her to death. My own worst critic. God bless her. Um, but yeah, but practically anyone can write a book. But one of the things that you would know if you've written about things within this area, that if you were going to include everything, then the book would be like this. It would be an encyclopedia of encyclopedias of encyclopedias. It would be bloody huge, and it wouldn't do anything, and no one would read it because it would be too big. So you have to make the cut in terms of what to leave out. Like if you look at some of the things that I learned um, about glasses in between version one and version two, it would be a tweak of the heuristics that you can use to apply the critical thinking within it, and information about the specific frames and the developments of observing contact lenses. Right? Is that enough to warrant a place in the book when it would be like 10 to 15 pages at best, and have to cut out some of the new tactics and specific things that I've developed around memory? No, because memory is more important. You can learn the information about glasses in your own time and in your own way if you've got the capacity to do it. Right? So this is the kind of trade off. And then I added in the QR codes, which I love. I love, like I was doing that when I was writing it, chuckling away, thinking you'll have this thing to look at, and it would be like having videos in session. It's I wanted a more interactive experience. So yeah, those are some of the challenges that came up between the two. Now there has been a comment explosion since this way. So let me scroll back and find Jay. There we go. Good evening. We go. Hen's got a question in. Uh, and again, if I'm having to squint my eyes, it's because I'm not wearing my glasses. I forgot to ask a question on the Facebook post, but on the topic of body language, you found me through me reviewing a person during a court case. Will I do any more of that sort of thing? There's the trade off. If people want to see it, 100%. 100% I'll do it. But here's the trade-off with the way I would, and we saw this with the panel of folks that I collected to do the baby reindeer video with the Fiona Harvey interview. It's not as, it doesn't have as much sex appeal when I do it, mostly because I'm not looking to confirm any biases. I'm not looking to confirm any stories or post anything that could be misconstrued, or ignore a variable just for the sake of saying something interesting about the twitch of a fingertip. There's a there's a friend of mine that kind of got into trouble on LinkedIn with Joe Navarro when he pointed out that just because you've been in a behavioral science unit doesn't really mean anything in terms of your capacity to read a person. Look at politicians that have been in politics for God knows how many decades, and they're crap. Right? So this is the kind of thing that I would roll into these videos. We could absolutely do them, but I would seek to pursue it through exploration of variables and just, well, basically sticking to the facts of the data as I know it, and as the people who will be in the video would know it as well. Because this is all we can really say, right? If we're watching a video, we're watching one source of a fixed point in time that can be paused and played with as much as possible. So we can't give anything concrete. If we're giving things concrete in that moment, you're doing a disservice to the tactics of reading someone that you don't truly understand. There we go, and that's kind of why it fell off, because um, I felt like I was screaming into a wind tunnel. I don't have 500 million followers to make what I say relevant. Not that I care one way or the other, but that's the related point to those kinds of videos. If it is that you look at some of the bigger channels that exist in this area, it is mainly in connection to these kind of appearingly intellectually sexy statements. That's really it. There's no real solid utilizing of the information. Now, I will preface by saying that could be a bias, because I haven't watched any of them in years. Right, when I found out that that was the majority of what was happening, and other colleagues in the area have and confirmed that to me, that that's still the case, but that could be a bias because I haven't watched them directly myself. So yeah, there we go. If will I do any more of that sort of thing? If there is interest, then I shall. If there isn't, then I shan't. um, Alakib Khalil. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. I tried. Could I make the monographs to be shipped worldwide in Amazon? I can't do that. I can't do that. Mostly because that's controlled, influenced by the publisher and the Amazon connections as well. It's not as easy to send books everywhere, mostly because and I could be wrong on this, mostly because of the kind of printing that is used. Right, so it's not just as a warehouse that prints off a bunch of books and you can send them to wherever that you've got an address for. There is an electronic capacity to the services that is printed in the particular country. So unless the particular country has that kind of setup, that's where the kind of struggle is, right? So that's the trade-off in there. I like Kib, but let's face it, somebody's probably already ripped a PDF copy of it and it's probably online somewhere. Uh, there was someone a while back when I was doing the podcast with Adam that messaged me about the availability of the first one in their country, and then messaged me after saying, "Never mind, I found it online for free." You've got balls. That makes you. Sorry, Phoebes, for saying this out loud. That makes you a dickhead for for doing it. But you know, I can't deny the impressive size of your cojones for telling me straight to my face. You know, fair play. Um, but yeah, so I can't have much control over that. I am going to work on an audio version of this. I've seen the way Ralph Little, the actor, well, no, I haven't seen. Maddie's told me about the way that Ralph Little records some of his voiceovers to make sure that they are audibly correct, in that he sits in the bathroom with a duvet over his head to make it seem like it's a sound cancelling room. You can buy the rooms online, but I aren't exactly flush with money or space, so I'm not going to do any of those things. um, so I will try and make an audible version of this, but there will be a Kindle version available as well, mostly because there is no concerns over any of the photographs or additional material. So the designing and creating of the PDF version was no issue. So this will go out on Kindle as well. So you'll get the electronic ones there to be able to use too. Let's have a look. Paolo's in the moment right now, procrastinating to go to the gym after a long day. That sucks, dude. Um, I mean, Dr. Joseph Bell existed. It's based in, yeah, he did, as well as a few others, right? As well as a few others. But that's where you can take inspiration from, knowing that people have adopted similar, but not the same skill sets. And that, Bruce would say we can have the same suit made out of the same material, but it will fit us in very different ways, right? Let's have a look. Uh, General conversion conversation. On the contrary, the bigger the book, the more readers it will have, at least in this field. Well, I appreciate. I mean, I would certainly read a book as that was that big, but that information is connected to the way that my publisher can put it out. The costs of putting out a book that big, it's not really a viable commodity. Um, Here we go. Oh, Hen. There you go, Hen. I've just seen your point. I disagree. I stopped watching all the other people that reviewed that case. I have continued watching you because I find you honest and interesting. Well, first of all, thank you very much for your candor. Um, so yeah, here's the thing, with those kinds of videos, uh, I don't actively look towards like, oh, this would be good to review, or that is particularly interesting, because it's based in whatever's trending at that particular moment. People only use these kinds of videos to gain views, right? Fair play, not knocking it whatsoever in doing that, but that's not something that I have any interest in using my time to be able to do, because it kind of begs the question that either they've got a team to do it for them, or if they're spending that much time to look for videos, then their ability to work in the field, that must be hindered by a result. So, um, let's say this to the people at large, right? The people at large. If it is that you would like me to review any videos, or bring the panel back, or a different panel, or an additional panel, or a bigger panel, or whatever it is, like we did for the baby reindeer, just send me some links. Just send me some links and we'll make it happen. Whether it be you commenting on this video when it goes out, or if you're able to send me a message somewhere, or an email, or an owl, or some kind of carrier pigeon, smoke signals, whatever it is, just send it to me and we'll do it. Um, but I appreciate you for saying that, Hen. It's certainly validating to know that at least one person gets it. Not that I'm interesting. I'm grateful that you find me interesting, but the honesty that I'm trying to put across with it, I'm grateful that that comes across. Now, Dylan, For your detective work, have you implemented the encyclopedic knowledge of crime as we see in the OG Sherlock Holmes books, and has that come in handy? Oh, it's a good question. It's a good question. Um, yeah, yeah, is the short answer. Um, though maybe not in the same way. Maybe not in the same way. Yeah. Whether it be in the OG Homes or there is a version of it that's coming to mind, mostly because I watched them quite recently. Whitechapel on Netflix. I believe it's season three. It's whenever the seasons go from three episodes to like six. I think it's season three. I'm not 100% sure. Brain seems to think it's season three, but I'm not 100%. Anyway, I'm digressing. When it goes into the longer episodes, it's because the character of Edward Buchan is hired to go down into the basement and review the histories of crime to find elements that are repeating. My work, in short, reviews case files, reviews interview footage, reviews assessment criteria, textbooks, all of these kinds of things. It's spoken about in Brent Turvey's work as well. But I use that to kind of inform my tactical approach towards the situation. So it is a little like using the encyclopedic knowledge of criminology more so than crime itself to be able to assist me in asking better questions of the information, to assist me in understanding more variables of the information in the moment, and so on and so on and so on. All of these kinds of additional options connect towards different tactics that I could apply in the moment in order to either validate, dismiss, or clarify certain things that is relevant to the case at hand. So yeah, there we go. I'm boshing through these a little bit faster because we're still in the live chat, and we've not even gotten to the network yet. And as I remember, some of the questions in the network were mainly about cookies. Spot the people that know me well without being able to have them say that explicitly, or however that's said on the internet. Paolo, use AI to replicate my voice. Nobody could replicate this silky smooth dialect. Of course they could, but I don't think AI would be as nonsensical as I am. Just a thought. Just call me hen. I think my favourite videos of you was when you were upside down in a bucket of ice water. Do I like doing those sorts of challenges? Yeah, yeah, I really do. I love to put my money where my mouth is as often as possible, and there's nothing more gratifying in the moment than failing because that is really the refreshing lesson to be learned in that moment. And again, I know that sounds like really douchey to say because it's become like trite and kind of Hallmark card esque, but it's true. It's true. So, like when I was being interviewed by a newspaper years ago, um, this guy he asked me questions about the paintings that were behind me in terms of the number of cars that were buried deep within them. I got that, and then he asked me where coffee was on the coffee machine. It got like the push button coffee was no touch screen. It was a good few years ago, and instead of it being two down, three over, I said it was three down, two over. So I got that wrong, categorically wrong. But like because I'd gotten close, he connected that as going, "Oh, you were close," and he made that connection for me because I was doing it genuinely. And that was the same thing that I learned through performing more and more. The the kind of demonstration of these things, actually doing them as best you can anyway. That if you got close through actually doing it, that they would come the rest of the way and support you. So this led me to other elements in developing kind of psychological theories for students about wrong not really existing. Sorry, I've got a hiccup stuck. That really hurt. I was trying to bury it, but it didn't really work out. But yeah, in terms of the challenges, because as part of my role, and I imagine is the case with most people over their day to day lives, they don't really experience fear in the same way that someone in the military, someone on the front lines would. And that degree of emotional qualities becoming antagonistic to clear reasoning, the clarity of thought that is designed to come along with that will be challenged over exposure. So I'm trying to find ways that replicate the challenges to my body and my mind. I try and do it in a fun way, or as visually a fun way as is possible. When I was upside down in a bucket of water, though that was fun to do, that one hurt like hell because I am tall, well, tallish, and with me being upside down and hanging from the gravity boots were just keeping me upright. They weren't holding any weight. I was just on my head. So all of my weight, and I'm heavy, so all of my weight is on my head, and I'm having to like solve Rubik's cubes and riddles and do memory games and all this kind of thing. And though it may have worked, it hurt. So that one wasn't particularly fun, but I did enjoy it, if that makes sense. But like doing the one chip challenge and memorizing a bunch of Chili's facts or observing things when I was getting tattooed and pressure testing speed and volume. It's tons of fun. It's tons of fun. The reason that I don't do as many of the challenges now is because I did a lot of them. Did a lot of varied and different ones. So when a challenge comes up that is unique, uh, uh, then I'll go at it in terms of filming it and showing everyone. But I take challenges every day. I love a challenge. Love a challenge. I mean, that was the whole reason for the deduction experiment years ago. Sending me a photo of anything and asking me any question about it. People sent me photos of boxes and asked me to tell them what was inside. Like, that was a great challenge. Um, Here we go. Anders Garcia. Ben, do you recommend any encyclopedia useful for this field? Um, well, Brent Turvey's work in terms of forensics and criminology, but and again, it's the kind of similar answer that I've given towards anything in terms of what should I read or what courses should I take and that type of thing. The question, relevant though it might be, you might get specifics from somebody else. My answer tends to reveal more about my thoughts in this way, mostly because I'm a dork. Um, so recommending any specific encyclopedia that is useful for this field, it will change from role to role to role within the particular field. So I recommend reading, looking at, listening to everything, because it is only in going through everything that you then truly get to decide what's relevant and specific and pertinent for you. Because what works for me in my area might not directly correlate to you, even if we have the same role. We're not in the same contexts, we're not in the same circumstance. Didn't get the one you said at the beginning, sorry. Brent Turvey. Brent. First name Turvey. Second name Brent Turvey. Look at his work. It's a great start. But I read everything, read anything you can get your hands on. Don't discriminate because you're making prejudgments on the material. It's biasing the way that you interact with the book. You can't really do that on the value of information. You have to take it in first and then go and do it. Then go and look at it. Right? So there we go. That's the comments tackled. Get in there. Let's have a look at the network. Uh Here we go. One sec. I need to click on it to bring it up. Network. There we go. 10 comments. Boom. Let's do the one question that isn't that isn't biscuit related first. Because if I remember right, it was Casey, it was Craig, and it was Pascal that asked me questions about biscuits. God love you, you scumbags. Okay, here we go. How to observe and absorb, memorize information from the environment like Sean Spencer. Okay, so I did a video on this a while back, but in terms of a very specific tactic of Spencer's, with the recreation of information from a battlefield to one, I think it was a toy air hockey table or a toy hockey table, in terms of taking stock of patterns that exist, converting to mnemonic data, and then reproducing later. So I did that a while back. But if you're looking in terms of the absorbing and memorizing of all things, we need to approach this with the fictional element first of all, because like when he memorizes a serial number on a bill, for example, those letters and numbers light up faster than you can read it, and that's regardless of what any kind of numbers where you're employing the Simon Reinhardt system or anything else. You need to be able to read the number first in order to convert it, regardless of how many numbers per structure you've got. So when it's going by faster than you can read it, that's job one, right? So put the speed aside for now and just look at volume. Volume is a habit. It is a habit. It's a habit connected to a feeling around a story. That's it. Sean Spencer, since a child, has had it drilled into him that he can take in everything from everywhere all at once, day in, day out. And yet, if you look at some of the stories that were told throughout the season, which is now on Netflix, by the way, there is things he misses. Right? There is elements that he misses. He doesn't take it all. So again, that's a trade-off there. So Paolo goes on to say, when I try, I feel like there's a huge cognitive load to memorize everything, even though I can memorize a deck of cards with quite an ease. It seems hard. If Julie, just try it with 2 Oreos. It's a great comeback. Well, there is, first of all, there is a huge cognitive load to memorizing everything. But you could try the trade off. Don't try and memorize, just observe everything, get involved. Do you memorize a film? Do you memorize a TV show? No, you just watch it. And I've spoken about this before a few times. The quick answer to that is at the end of each day, go through what you've been involved in. So from the second that you open your eyes, what information were you observing? Who did you speak to? What were they wearing? What did you speak to them about? What did you notice about what you were speaking about? And build that up through the course of your day. Now, if you're doing it a lot, you might get to the stage where at the end of each day you're going through like an hour's worth of information, which is a lot of data. So then you can start to look at the topic headings and things that you're getting a lot of information from. So you can trade that off in terms of your feedback and refocus, retrain in that way. It is just observing data. The cognitive load comes with time. It is a cerebral weight that needs to be deadlifted. You need practice. It won't happen in a few weeks. It won't happen in a few months. It will take years. You forget that season one, episode one, the pilot started with Sean as a kid, and it kept going back time and time and time and time again to Sean as a kid, to then Sean as an adult. That's a long time between, right? There we go. Where is it? Oh, it's top comments. I want all comments. Okay, there we go. Let's just change the order. So it would seem that Paolo's was the last one that was added, and then it's just changed the order to make KC's the first one that was added. So, KC, what's my favorite cookie flavor? Well, that's the rub. I would split the difference between cookie flavor and cookie style and the purpose of the cookie. I'm an aficionado because you get the soft baked ones in shops that are usually in packs of 4 or 5. They are for comfort eating, whereas you get the smaller ones, they are for dipping. So the flavor would be things like fruit and nut, different kinds of nuts, the macadamia ones, the oats, the chocolate chips, the double choc, triple choc, all of this kind of thing. The cookie style would be whether they are thick, chewy, crispy, or half coated. So in terms of answering all of that, I like my favorite ones are from a store in the UK called Aldi. It's a very cheap store. They're probably the equivalent of somewhere like Walmart in the States. They are a box of half coated double chocolate chip cookies, of which there are 8 to a pack, and they are great for dipping in a big cup of coffee because they sustain a pretty long dip, usually between 5 and 8 seconds before the integrity starts to go. There you go. There's a pretty detailed answer you weren't expecting. Um, Craig, how many cookies have you eaten in one sitting? I think the correct answer to this would be enough. Um, but again, so there is an exact answer to this. So these would be slightly smaller than the ones I've just noted. These are the Maryland size, though they were a Tesco everyday value version. So they're Maryland size, but not Maryland brand. So they're cheaper. Uh, 64 is the answer in one sitting. Um, so yeah, there you go. You didn't ask me why, so I ain't gonna tell you. How many cookies can you put in your mouth at the same time from Pascal? Again, if we look at the 8 elements of reasoning and the 9 standards of thought, we need clarity, we need precision, we need accuracy, we need depth, we need breadth in terms of that statement. Because how many cookies? What cookies? Are we doing? Are we doing Oreo? Are we doing the American version that call cookies cookies, even though they may be the size of a small British coin? What kinds of cookies? So if we were continuing with the Maryland option, 6 non-dipped, because if they were dipped, it would change the integrity and you could put more in technically. But 6 non-dipped cookies of that size in my mouth at the same time. Have a look. Oh, Julie, with the French. Quelle est ta meilleure recette de biscuits? Well, that's the question, isn't it? And so, just for the sake, I'm not going to translate it for the people that don't speak French. You can research this yourself. And I'm saying this now, hoping that I actually know what recette means. I believe I do. Um, je ne fais pas de cookies. Je dois les acheter car ma cuisine est nulle. There you go. Um, so yeah, let's have a look. I'm just going to leave that one out there. That feels like kind of a dick move, but it is what it is. um, oh, here we go. They've comments have gone up. Jeez. Uh, yes, the more the better. Just call me in. How often do you look at old cases? A friend of mine have been researching a woman who she thinks could possibly have been Jack the Ripper. Ooh, nice. In terms of old cases, nowadays, maybe 2 or 3 times a month, maybe. I don't go back to them that often now because I've been over that many of them up until this stage. There's a lot of information to kind of pool and use. Um, so yeah, not that often, but there is value to it. There is value. The only way mistakes can be avoided is to learn from them, right? They have an Aldi in the States. This is wonderful news. I had no idea. There is an Aldi in America. Amazing. Whereabouts? I'm going back to America in July to work. Maybe I'll track some down. Craig knows. Craig knows the score with the cookies. Yeah, you do. First time I met Craig, he gave me a decent supply of cookies. So fair play. Uh, uh, 64 isn't that many. Easily done. Okay, the gauntlet has been set. Maybe I need to up my game a little bit. The amount of press ups I would need to do on the back of that would be unheard of. Um, 64 relatively small ones, fair enough. I can eat a whole packet or two of Maryland cookies. It's decent work. It's decent work. Okay, guys, there we go. That was a pretty fun one. Well, it was fun for me. Anyway, if you guys got something out of it, then brilliant. If you didn't, then I'm really sorry. I've just wasted an hour and 15 minutes of your time. Uh, but I hope it wasn't a waste, and all of the information still stands. Any links you want me to look at, send them. Any questions you want to ask, add them. And so on and so forth. Maybe if there's enough questions, we'll do another AMA again soon. But yeah, so I'm thinking that might be an approach for me in the future. If I have to go back to work in another country for a little bit, then I'll put a pause on the podcasts. It just makes it easier for me. Won't lie to you, just makes it easier for me. So yeah, until that time, I appreciate that, Hen, so much so I'm going to put it on the screen so everyone can see. It has been fun. Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you for listening. So I'm going to love you and leave you, folks. Have a great morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you're up to.